Hello, everyone, welcome back to the channel Global Times USA. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today's story brings us into one of the most dramatic turning points in modern warfare, a moment when the skies over one of the world's largest cities turned into a theater of fire and smoke. The breaking news that Ukraine's drones have ignited Moscow in flames is not simply another headline. It is a symbol of how the balance of war, technology, and psychology has shifted in the 21st century. What began as a distant regional conflict has now reached deep into the heart of the Russian capital, challenging not just military power, but also the sense of invulnerability long cultivated by the Kremlin. As flames rise over Moscow's skyline and emergency sirens echo through the night, the world watches in awe and disbelief. When we talk about what has happened, we are looking at a moment when unmanned technology met geopolitical symbolism. Ukraine's drones, once seen as simple defensive weapons, have evolved into precision instruments capable of long-range attacks. Their purpose is not only physical destruction, but also psychological impact. Moscow, a city of more than 12 million people, had believed itself beyond the reach of such strikes. Yet the glowing fires in the night have shown otherwise. Flames lighting up the glass towers and concrete blocks of the city are not just the result of explosions. They are the result of a calculated message that no city, however powerful, is completely safe from the consequences of aggression. The footage circulating on social media shows streaks of light crossing the night sky before descending toward their targets. The drones are small, swift, and difficult to intercept. Each carries a payload designed to ignite or damage upon impact. Some hit infrastructure, others crash into industrial facilities, and a few reportedly strike near symbolic sites within Moscow's metropolitan perimeter. The explosions are not enormous, but the fires they cause are highly visible. The smoke rising into the skyline paints an image of vulnerability that the Russian government has long tried to avoid. Citizens record the spectacle on their phones. Emergency lights flash in the distance, and for the first time in decades, Moscow experiences the fear of an air assault. The technology behind these drones represents a quiet revolution. They are inexpensive compared to traditional missiles, yet their precision and persistence make them potent. Ukraine's engineers have spent years refining these designs. Some of the drones are constructed from lightweight composite materials that reduce radar detection. Others are built for endurance, capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers to reach targets deep within enemy territory. Powered by efficient electric or combustion engines, guided by GPS and onboard sensors, these drones can fly autonomously once launched, following pre-programmed routes until they find their coordinates. What makes them particularly dangerous is their swarm capability. Dozens or even hundreds can be launched simultaneously, overwhelming air defenses that cannot shoot down every incoming threat. Reports from Moscow's outskirts describe loud explosions and blazes that lit up the night sky. Russian air defense claimed to have intercepted many drones, but even a small percentage of successful strikes was enough to cause panic. Firefighters battled burning buildings for hours. Video clips from ordinary citizens captured entire streets blanketed in smoke, their windows shattered from shockwaves. Some residents rushed into basements, others crowded subway stations seeking shelter. For a capital that has prided itself on security, this was a deep shock to its collective psyche. The notion that the war could reach Moscow had long been dismissed, yet now it was unfolding in front of their eyes. What drives Ukraine to carry out such bold operations is not mere revenge or spectacle, it is strategy. By targeting Moscow, Ukraine forces Russia to divert resources from the front lines to defend its own capital. Every drone that flies toward Moscow demands radar systems, interceptors, and soldiers who might otherwise be used elsewhere. The economic cost multiplies as well. For the price of one modern interceptor missile, Ukraine can launch dozens of low-cost drones. The asymmetry is striking. One side spends millions to defend itself, while the other spends thousands to attack. This cost imbalance is reshaping modern warfare, proving that innovation and adaptability can rival raw power. From a technical perspective, the performance of these drones reveals both sophistication and persistence. Each successful hit is the product of careful coordination. The drones communicate through encrypted channels, sometimes flying at low altitude to avoid radar. They rely on satellite data or onboard cameras to identify landmarks and adjust their course mid-flight. Some are designed to detonate on impact, while others carry incendiary substances that cause fires rather than explosions. The effect is psychological as much as physical. A fire can burn for hours, broadcasting fear and confusion long after the drone itself has been destroyed. Inside the drones lies a blend of simplicity and ingenuity. The body frames are often made using consumer-grade components modified for military use. Motors may come from commercial suppliers. Navigation chips might be the same as those used in smartphones. Yet when integrated, these parts form a weapon capable of altering global headlines. Engineers program each drone with fail-safe systems. If communication is lost, it continues to the target autonomously. If intercepted, some models can self-destruct to avoid capture. The payloads vary from explosives to thermite compounds, which burn at extremely high temperatures and can ignite fuel depots or industrial structures. This combination of affordability, adaptability, and lethality defines the new era of drone warfare. Within the broader context of the conflict, these attacks symbolize Ukraine's determination to strike back. After months of facing bombardments on its own cities, Ukraine is demonstrating that it can project power across borders. It is also sending a signal to the Russian public that their government's war is no longer confined to foreign lands. The sight of fire in Moscow's skyline conveys a message more powerful than any statement. The consequences of war are now at home. For Ukraine, this is both tactical and psychological warfare, an attempt to break the illusion of distance and immunity. The response from Russian authorities has been a mixture of denial and defiance. Officials claim that the majority of drones were intercepted, that fires were contained, and that the situation is under control. Yet eyewitnesses describe a different picture: streets closed off, smoke lingering in the air, and visible signs of panic among civilians. Russian media outlets, traditionally restrained in covering internal damage, were forced to acknowledge the incidents due to the flood of online footage. This transparency, albeit limited, marks a change. The war that was once fought at the edges of maps has now entered the heart of Russia's most guarded city. As the story unfolds, the performance of air defense systems becomes a focal point. Moscow's layered defenses, including radar arrays, missile interceptors, and electronic warfare systems, were thought to be among the most advanced in the world. Yet the ability of small drones to bypass or overwhelm these defenses raises serious questions. Drones flying low and slow can slip beneath radar coverage, while their small radar signature makes them difficult to detect until it is too late. Some reports suggest that Russian defenses were forced to engage with close-range gunfire or short-range missiles, creating bursts of anti-aircraft fire over residential neighborhoods. This chaotic imagery adds to the sense of vulnerability and unease. For the people living in Moscow, the experience of hearing explosions in the night is deeply unsettling. Many compare it to the early days of air raids in past wars, when fear of the unknown dominated the atmosphere. Yet this time, the attackers are not fleets of bombers but small, buzzing machines barely visible to the naked eye. The hum of propellers in the distance becomes a sound of dread. Parents wake their children and move them to safer rooms. The city that once represented power and control is momentarily reduced to fear and confusion. Economically, the consequences are already visible. Insurance rates for certain facilities rise overnight. Companies operating in industrial areas near the strikes suspend operations. Stock markets react to the news with caution, reflecting investor anxiety. Every drone attack, no matter how limited in scale, ripples through financial systems because it demonstrates that infrastructure and stability can be disrupted far from the front lines. For Russia's leadership, this becomes not only a military issue, but an economic and political one. The image of security that the government has long projected is now under question. Ukraine, on the other hand, gains leverage. These operations prove that long-range strikes are possible despite limited resources. Each successful mission boosts morale among Ukrainians who have endured months of attacks. It also draws international attention, reminding the world that the conflict remains dynamic and unresolved. Supporters of Ukraine view these drone strikes as acts of resilience. Critics warn of escalation. Regardless of perspective, the symbolism is undeniable. Technology has leveled the battlefield in ways unimaginable a decade ago. Looking deeper into the mechanics, the drone's energy sources are a key factor. Many run on lithium-based batteries, providing hours of flight time and quiet operation. Others use small combustion engines that allow longer range but create more noise. Some models are equipped with night vision cameras and infrared sensors, enabling them to navigate in darkness. The precision of modern GPS allows them to strike within meters of their target. These capabilities turn what was once a hobbyist's gadget into a strategic weapon. The cost remains remarkably low compared to missiles or aircraft, which makes mass deployment feasible. This affordability is one of the defining advantages of modern drones. They democratize the ability to strike. The impact on Russian society cannot be overstated. People accustomed to viewing war as a distant event are now facing its presence in their own neighborhoods. Emergency services are stretched thin, and social media channels are filled with conflicting narratives. Some residents express anger toward their government for failing to protect them. Others call for harsher retaliation. The cycle of propaganda and fear spins faster. Meanwhile, outside observers analyze the footage frame by frame, identifying drone types, flight paths, and explosion patterns. Analysts note that many of the drones appear to have been launched from multiple directions simultaneously, suggesting a sophisticated coordination effort. What makes this situation extraordinary is how it redefines the notion of deterrence. Traditional deterrence relied on large-scale weapons and threats of retaliation. Drone warfare, however, operates in the shadows. It allows a weaker side to inflict meaningful damage without risking pilots or expensive aircraft. It creates uncertainty that keeps adversaries constantly on edge. Moscow, once confident in its layered defenses, now faces the reality that its size and complexity make it vulnerable to small, mobile, and intelligent weapons. The psychological impact of this shift may last longer than any physical damage. For the international community, the fires over Moscow represent a glimpse into the future of conflict. Nations around the world are watching closely, realizing that drone technology can bypass traditional military power. The question now is how governments will adapt. Will they invest in new detection systems, electronic jamming technologies, or counter drone swarms? Or will they seek diplomatic resolutions before such technology spreads further? The events unfolding in Moscow are not just about Russia and Ukraine, they are about the transformation of warfare itself. While military analysts dissect the technical aspects, ordinary people are left with emotional scars. A city known for its culture, history, and monuments now bears burn marks on its skyline. The sight of firefighters climbing smoking towers and citizens sweeping debris from their balconies captures the human cost of modern warfare. Behind every drone strike lies the story of people displaced, businesses disrupted, and memories shattered. Technology may make war efficient, but it does not make it humane. In terms of efficiency, the Ukrainian drones have demonstrated a ratio of cost to effect that no conventional weapon can match. Each drone costs a fraction of the interceptor used to shoot it down. Even if most are intercepted, a few reaching their targets can cause disproportionate damage and fear. This is the new math of conflict, quantity and adaptability replacing brute force. It is a form of warfare that favors innovation over tradition and agility over size. As days pass, experts debate whether these strikes will continue or escalate. Russia vows to strengthen its defenses and retaliate, while Ukraine insists that such operations are part of its right to defend itself. The world stage becomes tense as nations weigh the risk of further escalation. The fires in Moscow may extinguish, but the strategic and psychological blaze they ignite may burn far longer. The footage of glowing rooftops and plumes of smoke will be replayed in history as a symbol of how the war evolved beyond borders and expectations. When considering the future, one must acknowledge that this kind of warfare cannot easily be contained. Technology spreads rapidly. The same components used in these drones can be purchased on global markets. As such, the line between state and non-state actors becomes blurred. Any group with enough motivation and knowledge can potentially replicate similar tactics. This decentralization of warfare challenges existing security structures and makes the world a more unpredictable place. For Ukraine, these attacks are part of a broader narrative of resilience. A country fighting for its survival has managed to innovate under pressure, transforming civilian technology into a weapon of national defense. Engineers working in underground workshops, volunteers assembling parts, programmers coding navigation systems, all contribute to an ecosystem of ingenuity driven by necessity. It is a testament to how adversity breeds innovation. For Russia, however, the challenge is existential. Protecting a vast country from small, agile threats is nearly impossible. The strikes on Moscow may not cripple the state, but they expose its vulnerability in a way that propaganda cannot conceal. The contrast between official statements of strength and the reality of burning buildings is stark. Each new attack chips away at the image of control. Ultimately, this story is about adaptation, how nations, militaries, and people adjust to a world where power is no longer measured solely in tanks or missiles, but in ideas, code, and innovation. The drone is both a weapon and a message. It says that in modern warfare, creativity can outmatch convention. It tells us that the battlefield is everywhere, from the skies above cities to the networks guiding machines across borders. It also reminds us that beneath every technological breakthrough lies a human consequence, fear, loss, and resilience. As we look back on the night Moscow burned, it is clear that history will remember this moment as a demonstration of how warfare has changed. No longer do empires rely solely on massive arsenals. Instead, they must contend with opponents who can strike from a distance using devices that fit in the trunk of a car. The rules are being rewritten, and every nation is taking notes. The lesson is clear: in the era of drones, no city is beyond reach, and no defense is absolute. For those watching around the world, the images of fire over Moscow are both thrilling and terrifying. They show courage, innovation, and defiance, but also pain and risk. They capture the dual nature of technology, its ability to protect and to destroy. And as the flames die out and the smoke clears, the questions they leave behind will shape the future of security, politics, and humanity itself.